Dave, let's talk real quick
Sure.
about warp and impulse speeds. What do you know about those?
Warp and impulse speeds. I mean, moving faster than light being the mechanism as we described in First Contact as what proved to the rest of the universe or the rest of the galaxy that mankind was a more advanced form of life. So very, very important. And also created by Mr. Cochrane.
Yes, Zephram Cochrane.
Zephram Cochrane, who Geordie went to the high school named after, went to Zephram Cochrane High School.
Okay, so I always had a bit of a thing here because I thought in the original series they said that Zephram Cochrane was from Alpha Centauri.
Mm.
I've never gone back to watch it any closer to see where the mistake was. But, they obviously in First Contact, they put him on Earth in Bozeman, Montana, which was actually kind of fun. I actually liked watching James Cromwell play that role because he vacillates so quickly between this bold thinker and then a total chicken shit. He goes between those two things so quickly. But there's also a scene in there where he asked them, he's like, do you know what my vision for the future was? It was dollar signs and topless women in Tahiti.
Right.
And I always thought that was maybe a barb at Gene Roddenberry. Because while Gene Roddenberry he was a very progressive dude, but he was also like, hey, all the chicks on the show should be naked and have 3 boobs. He checked out of Star Trek about partway through season 2 so he could start pitching other shows and left it to flounder and die in other people's hands. And then when he was offered to make a movie, he just started pitching out such weird ideas that they had to get him off the shows. But, his whole thing was he needed to make money off of it and he needed to do this, that, and the other. That I always kind of wondered if the Zephram Cochrane thing was just a real sly, you guys think Star Trek is this progressive, this, that, and the other. But it really just started as some guys adventure series where chicks wore miniskirts,
I never even thought about that, but that's an interesting point. I just always took it as a never meet your heroes kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to say that was even the only thing, if that was even the thing that was being done there. But I've got a friend who, he's an editor. He did a lot of stuff with Blue Moon and those guys back in the day. And he's a big Star Trek fan. This guy has had more deep thoughts about Star Trek while he was asleep than I've ever had in my whole life, But he and I were talking one time and he goes, look, man, for me, Star Trek's about 3 dudes with gun holsters on, beaming down to a planet. And they're either going to talk a computer to death, punch something, shoot something, or sleep with someone until things go their way. And I was like, wow, I've never heard it stated so succinctly,
Or it's, everybody sitting in a room and the action sequence is the director telling everyone to suddenly lean to their right while you shake the camera.
Yeah. Well, that's starship acting. I guess there's something for that.
Yeah, there's something, all right.
Yeah.
But going back to the warp thing, I do want to point out, or I am curious about this, because with Star Wars, the biggest joke was always that they zip across a galaxy in 2 minutes. Yeah. Where it's the idea of the physics necessary for that, how fast could they possibly be going? But then eventually Star Wars with The Last Jedi, they did the whole jump thing. They mentioned space jumps, which is now Marvel, MCU has done that too. And so I think that warp technology wound up, at least it was an explanation at first. I actually think now it's at the point where it actually it goes backwards. It's actually the less efficient fictional narrative, because how exactly does this thing go warp speed and not hit anything? I mean, yeah, I guess it's theoretically possible. There's tons of empty space. But what happens if you collide with anything, even the smallest amount of whatever?
Well, just a piece of dust at relativistic speeds is enough to rip your ship into the shreds.
Exactly. And yeah, it's empty space. I get it. But, I'm just saying, you can't warp from a solar system to a solar system. You've got to be warping only in pure, complete empty space.
So that deflector dish at the front of the ship is actually there to push stuff out of the way of the ship, including particles. In Star Wars, remember as they get ready to jump to light speed, they always have to wait for the computer to do something. That computer is actually calculating a route where there's nothing between them and their endpoint.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, so it's that's why I think Han Solo even says something like, if that doesn't do its job, we're going to fly right through a sun or hit a planet or that sort of thing.
Right.
But yeah, so the way I understand warp speed is that when those engines kick on, a bubble forms around the ship, almost like a magnetic field. But it drops it into I think they call it subspace, I think is what they call it in Star Trek. Drops it into a universe where things can travel faster than light.
Right.
So now it can traverse at this speed, and it's basically being pushed along by this field, and then that deflector dish up front shoots out this constant wave that keeps things from being right in front of it. But that being said, you're right. If there was, some solid body, you should be able to park a ship right in front of them and destroy the whole thing then, if that was the case.
Seriously. Yeah. And another small detail, since you brought it up about this, where exactly is the con located on the Enterprise? And I have I'm bringing this up for a reason, but.
Okay. The right-hand side, if you're sitting in the captain's chair, I believe the right-hand side is the navigator, so the con would be the left-hand side.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where's the bridge? Where's the bridge located?
Oh, the bridge is okay. So, pick any Federation ship that's the standard, saucer and warp nacelles.
Right.
The very center of the saucer, on the very top, is where the bridge is.
But here's my question: why would you put it there?
Because that's where ship bridges used to be back in World War II days.
But if we're dealing with it's the exact same thing we were talking about the warp speed and possibly hitting and stuff, isn't that extremely vulnerable?
Yeah, but also remember that part of the vision of Star Trek was these were not military vessels.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And this is one way they could actually point that these are not military, because why would you have your main target with all your primary positions right there, They were only supposed to, engage militarily if nobody else was available. That being said, it's still not a great decision. That should be at the center of the mass of the ship with all sorts of stuff around it.